Okay, on this video, we're going to talk about the sublayers of your epidermis. So we're going to talk about each of the stratums, and stratums just means layers that are stacked on. And we're going to talk about what happens in each one. First thing you need to know is the name of each of these stratums. And so closest to the surface, or the most superficial, is called stratum corneum. I'm going to number that 1, so this is going to be closer to the surface. And then stratum lucidarm, and not all of your skin has this stratum, so we'll just find that in special layers. And then we have stratum granulosum. This is our third deep. And then stratum spinosum is our fourth. And then our fifth, let me scroll on down, is the stratum basale, or the basal stratum. So you can call it basale. Some people call it basale, some say basal, whichever you prefer. Basal is near that basement membrane there, so it is our most deep. So I've got them numbered 1 through 5, and the way you can remember those is come let's get sunburned, and that is going to be the order from the most superficial to the most deep, and that's for corneum, lucidarm, granulosum, spinosum, and the basal stratum. So you do need to have stratum in front of them. So let's start. We're going to start closest to or the most deep at that basement membrane, and let's talk about what's happening at each. So I'm going to go back to this picture, because this is the picture that you have in your notes, and we're going to scroll over to the side where you have all that extra spot to write, and then I'll be scrolling back so we can look. So we're going to start, and I'm just going to number them 1. This was 5. So sorry. So this is that stratum basal or basale. And so what I'd like you to know about this one, let me get it where I can write, is I would like you to know this is where the certain cells that we've got going on here. So the cells that we have involved here, and we'll just subdivide them. So, well, we have melanocytes, right? Melanocytes, and the melanocytes are making melanin. And we do have keratinocytes, but they're very specific keratinocytes, and they're called basal keratinocytes. And we'll talk about those. And then you have those Merkel cells, which are those sensory of that light touch. So those are our main cells that we've got in that layer. And so on the cancer video, we'll talk about melanoma, which is the cancer of your melanocytes, which is the deadly. And the other thing I would like you to know about what's going on here is lots of mitosis. So what is mitosis? Well, mitosis is the cells dividing. So I'm going to pull back over onto the picture and let you see. So this is what you're seeing here, is some mitosis going on. So here's a melanocyte. They're the ones that look kind of blobby going on. They're making the melanin. Everything else is keratinocytes that you're seeing. Keratinocytes make keratin, and so they're going to make keratin. They actually make more keratin as they push their way up. It's because all the mitosis is happening here. All the new cells are being happen. What's happening, let's just pick a cell. I'm going to pick this one. Okay, so these are dividing. We're going to start to see cells being pushed towards the surface is what's going to happen. And as they're getting pushed towards the surface, they're going to be making more and more keratin, and eventually there's going to be so much keratin in the cell that the cells will completely fill up with keratin and the cell will die. So basically your keratinocytes are committing suicide as they go up, and as we get to certain layers you have nothing but dead keratinized cells there that are layered out so to protect you. So they're starting down here, and we've got mitosis going on. It's pushing all those cells upward as these new cells are being formed, and they are filling up with melanin for sure, but also keratin as they move towards the surface. So that's what's happening in our types of cells that we see in the stratum basale, or the basal. So go back over here, and our fourth one, which is the stratum spinosum. And so I want to talk about why it's called spinosum. Is when we look at it under the microscope, it looks very spiky. And the reason it looks spiky is the cells are connected in this area by desmosomes. So remember, the desmosomes are like the spot weld. So desmosomes, that's kind of important. This is in spinosum. Desmosomes, which were, the key word for that was spot weld. And that's how they're communicating there, and that's how we've got things going on. So because they have these spot welds, it gives them a spiky look under the microscope. A spiky look under the microscope. I don't have to put it under the microscope. So that's what I want you to know, why that's called spinosum. Again, we have those keratinocytes making the keratin, pushing their way up. We've got some desmosomes going on, and this, when we put the stain on them, we put them in a hypertonic environment. All the water shoots out of them, so it leaves the cells very spiky with this. What I'd also like you to know is in this particular, this is where your Langerhans cells are present in this spinosum. Let me scoot over here where we can see. I don't know if you can see with your thing, but here are those little spiky things going here, and those are those spot welds. And so what happens when we put them under, put dye on them, that's hypertonic, water will shoot out of the cells, and these guys are all held together so they'll look really spiky. Alright, so now we're going to look at that third deep, which is the stratum granulosum, and here is where we start to see those keratinocytes. Let me go ahead and put keratinocytes. They're going to start to fill up with that keratin, and they're going to begin dying here at this level. So in granulosum, keratinocytes start to die, which is sad. And the main reason is they're filling up with, partly because they're filling up with keratin, but the other is we've gone way too far away from our blood supply. Far from blood supply. So remember, there is no, this is an avascular, your epidermis is all avascular, and so down in connective tissue land, you remember epithelial has no blood supply. So we've moved so far away from the blood supply down here in that connective tissue land, which is where those blood vessels are. So we're starting to see them die here. That's why they're starting to flatten out. They still have the desmosome, but those desmosomes were first started here in spinosum here. So they're starting to fill up with keratin. They're starting to die here. As we get to these two stratums, you want to put a star by these two. We are dead. They are dead. This is dead layers here, which is why they're so flat. So those are our dead keratinocytes there. All right, so then we go on to the stratum luciderm. And I said a while ago that not all your skin has luciderm, and the reason it's called luciderm is because lucid means clear. So this is actually a clear layer of dead skin, basically, because they have died. here's dead skin layer, but it's only found in areas that would need an extra layer of dead skin. So we need extra protection. So we only find it in the palms of your hands and the sole of your feet. So it's only found in thicker skin. This gives us that extra layer. That looks bad. And so that is the palms of your hand and bottom of your feet and soles of your feet. Alrighty. So not all of your things have it. So if you think of when you get a blister and stuff, that's when you get that dead layer, you get that fluid in between from friction. So that is in the luciderm. And our last is stratum corneum, the most superficial. And what I want you to know is this is nothing but dead keratinized cells. And they will slough off. That means they just come off, and what will happen, they will be replaced. So they'll just slough off and will be, oh, that's bad. And they will slough off and they will be will slough off and be replaced. Okay, slough off means that they'll just flake off. All right, so they're dead keratinized cells that will slough off. So basically they're starting down here, really kind of talking those keratinocytes, because the melanocytes stay down there. They just, remember, those melanosomes fill up with melanin, and the keratinocytes end up with the melanin. But your keratinocytes start and they push their way up, and they are dying as they get to the top. So that leads us to, that's just showing what's happening here. They start to become flat and harden in that granulosome. They're starting that death there. But I wanted to show you here what they look like up in corneum. So it says tough 15 to 30 layers consists of dead flat cells. So that is what really helps us be waterproof, and that will slough off there. And so it leads us to this last question. So why is a tattoo permanent but a suntan is not? Or a henna tattoo is not permanent? And the difference is a permanent tattoo gets you down here in the dermis. And so in the dermis is where you've got those blood vessels, so these cells all stay alive. But here they're forming and then they're pushing their way up and dying. And so they're constantly being replaced here. So a sunburn is not permanent because you haven't got down into the dermis. Now that's where we lead to different types of burns here. So also if you get a cut and you start bleeding, you've gotten down into the dermis, because this is where your blood supply is. Your blood supply is down in your dermis, your papillary or reticular layers. But all of these stratums, none of them have blood supply. So if you are bleeding, you've gotten a little bit deeper. All right, that's our stratums. See you on the next video.